If she had just gotten to her bus stop a minute later, she might still be alive today. Hello, true crimeers. This is the case of Ann Harrison. Viewer discretion is advised. At the time this case occurred, Ann Harrison was just 15 years old. She was a happy-go-lucky young kid. She had a very bright future ahead of her. She was incredibly intelligent. She was also athletic. She loved playing sports. She loved being outdoors. She loved being with her friends. She was an honor roll student at high school. She was a freshman, and she attended Raytown South High School in Raytown, Missouri. From what it sounds like, at least back then in 1989, Raytown, Missouri was a very small, close-knit community. I don't know if it's gotten any bigger, since. But then, on March 22nd, 1989, her life would be taken. It was about 6:30 in the morning on March 22nd, 1989. Ann Harrison's mom would hear Ann scream from her bedroom, "I'm up." Ann's mom could hear sounds coming from Ann's bedroom, the scuffling of her getting up, getting her school supplies ready. She heard the shower start, and Ann took a shower. Then, as her mom is doing some chores around the house, she hears the front door open, and then she hears it creak closed. It was routine. It was a normal morning in the Harrison house. At around 7 o'clock in the morning is when Ann Harrison would have gone out to the bus stop, which was literally just outside of her home or down the street from it. She would wait by the mailbox, and she just sat there and waited like she did every morning for school. But this time, when the bus got there, Ann was not at the bus stop. You see, the night prior, Michael Taylor and his friend Roderick Nunley, they had gone on a cocaine bender. They stole a vehicle, a 1984 blue Monte Carlo. They were also smoking pot. They were drinking wine coolers. They were completely out of their minds that night. And this lasted all through the night and into the morning. And on that March 22nd, 1989 morning, at approximately 7 o'clock in the morning, those two men in the stolen vehicle just so happened to pass by right as Ann Harrison is waiting for her bus. According to court documents, what happens next is that the two men stop the car outside the bus stop, and apparently the plan was for one of them to get out and steal Ann's, what they claim was her purse. So Mr. Nunley gets out of the car and talks to Ann, pretending like he needs directions somewhere. Then he just suddenly grabs the 15-year-old girl and yanks her into the car and puts her in between him and his friend. Then they speed away. And as they did that, all of Ann's books and her backpack and everything fell to the ground right next to the mailbox. Literally within a minute or two, the bus comes and Ann is not there. The bus driver, who knows Ann, this is a small community again, honked the horn expecting Ann to come out. Maybe she was running late. He waits another minute or two, honks the horn again. At this point, her mom, Ann's mom, hears the bus. She runs outside to say, "Hey, what's going on?" And the bus driver was like, "Well, where's Ann? I'm here to pick her up." And then she looks down and she sees the book bag and everything on the ground right next to the mailbox. And so kind of in a panic, Ann's mom runs to the house and calls some of her friends and say, "Hey, is somehow Ann with you?" Or she called the parents, and they're like, "No, all of our kids are already left for school." And immediate panic mode kicks in. Something feels wrong. And so she first contacts the school just to make sure that Ann didn't get there. She didn't. Then she reports Ann missing because, again, something felt very wrong to her. Now, it doesn't sound like anyone actually witnessed this abduction. Back in the car, the two apparently are basically telling Ann to stop screaming. They blindfolded her, and I guess they used one of their socks to wrap around her eyes to blindfold her. They then showed her a knife and said, "If you don't stop screaming, we're going to stab you." So Michael Taylor drives to Roderick Nunley's house, I guess his grandma's house or his mom's house. They then take the girl and they bring her down to the basement. And at that point, they found some cable wire that they bound her wrists with behind her back. Once in the basement, the two men removed her clothing and they would rape her. Both men would take turns sexually assaulting this 15-year-old child. Once they were both finished, they actually untied Anne's wrists and let her put her clothes back on. Anne went to her knees and begged them, please call my parents, give them like a ransom demand, they'll pay it, and just let me go home and let me go home safe. Please don't hurt me anymore. But instead, they put their makeshift blindfold back on her, tied her back up, walked her back up. I guess no one else was home or no one noticed this was happening. They brought her back up to the Monte Carlo, again, the stolen Monte Carlo. They opened the trunk and forced her inside. She resisted. She was like, shaking. She was scared. And they tried to tell her, this is just for your benefit. They said, it's just so nobody sees you. And then both men lifted her and put her into the trunk. Roderick Nunley then walks back into the house where he takes 2 knives, I guess from their butcher's block, and goes back to the car. Roderick Nunley and Michael Taylor allegedly had a back and forth argument about whether or not they were going to kill this young girl. Roderick was like, we have to, because she's seen both of our faces. She can identify us, and that's it. Like, we have to kill her. And Michael Taylor ended up agreeing with him. And so they take the car to a secluded area. They open the trunk and they just take one of the knives, I guess a steak knife, and they try to slash Anne's throat. But it's so dull that it doesn't work. Then he took one of the knives and he just jammed it into Anne's throat. And then he told Michael Taylor, you need to stab her too. And so he takes the other knife and he begins to forcibly stab her. And then Roderick also continues to stab her at least 2 or 3 more times. One of them would later state that they saw Anne's eyes roll to the back of her head as she gasped for her final breaths. They then go back and get they take or they steal a second vehicle, and they drive the Monte Carlo to another location, and they open the trunk again, and they confirm that Anne has passed away from her wounds. They then just abandoned the stolen Monte Carlo, they got into the other stolen vehicle, and they took off. They go back to Roderick Nunley's house where they dispose of the sock that was used to blindfold her. They disposed of the cable wire they used to tie her up, and they disposed of the knives that were used to kill her. Meanwhile, back at the house, Anne's house, they're panicking. They're reporting her missing. All they have is her book bag with like her gym clothes and like just her belongings that she would take to school every day, and no sign of Anne. And the neighbors, nobody saw or heard anything. They don't know that Anne is already dead. Police get involved, and they do an all hands on deck thing. They are searching everywhere for her. And then on March 23rd, the day after this all occurred, they find the stolen Monte Carlo because it had been reported stolen, and so police had found it. Once the owner of the stolen vehicle was informed, he and a friend goes to where it was, and they confirm it's his stolen car, and they open the trunk and they find something completely unexpected: the horribly stabbed body of a 15-year-old child. Meanwhile, the 2 men who did this, they are high, they're drunk. They're just on all sorts of things, and they brag. They're laughing about what they did. They think it's funny. They think, and they think, we got away with this. And they did for about 3 months. Police put out about a $9,000 or $10,000 reward for any information that would help lead to the capture of Anne's killers. And because the 2 men had bragged and joked about it, and this included in front of other people, eventually tips would lead police to both of these men. Now, they collected evidence from Anne's body, and this included a strand of hair that was not hers or anyone from her family. They also found a similar strand of hair in the stolen Monte Carlo, because that became an immediate crime scene, obviously. But the hair found in the car was the same exact hair found on her body. They also found male bodily fluid with Anne's remains on her clothing and on her as well. And once both of these men came into the forefront of the investigation, they were able to get a warrant to search Roderick Nunley's house, which included his basement. In the basement, they found strands of hair. Not the same strands of hair found in the car and on Anne. These are different. And these hairs were not consistent with either two men or anyone who lived in that house. They would soon find out that the strands of hair found in the basement belonged to Ann Harrison. Then they take DNA from the men and they confirm that the hair found on her body and the DNA found, like physical male bodily fluid found with her body, actually belonged to Michael Taylor, one of the two men. Both men would end up basically pointing the finger at one another, but both essentially admitting they were both responsible for what happened. But they were trying to say, well, no, he started it, he instigated it. No, the other, he did. No, he did. Like, it was this back and forth. Neither of them wanted to take full responsibility for what actually occurred, almost suggesting that one of them was coerced into doing this horrible thing, when the actuality is that they both equally participated in this. And this is based off of how they bragged about it, based off of witness statements and testimony, that this was both of them, 100%. And so both men were arrested and charged with her murder. And the coroner would state that Anne was alive for every single stab wound. Every time that knife went into her, she was still alive. So essentially, these two men, not only did they rape her, they kidnapped her, but they tortured her with a knife. And then she slowly bled out. It was not a quick death for Anne. This was a monstrous, horrific thing to do. I think because both men had essentially confessed their involvement in this, that the DNA placed them with her and her remains, and she was in one of their homes. So like this happened in, Roderick's house, but Michael Taylor's DNA was the one found with most of the DNA that was found was his. Both men knew they were screwed. they weren't getting out of this. And so they both ended up pleading guilty to the murder and also to rape charges and to kidnapping charges, as well as other charges to go on top of it. Both men, even though they agreed to, plead guilty to this, both men would be sentenced to death. It got to a point where years later, I guess the death penalties for the men were reversed, and the courts didn't exactly explain why. They didn't really give the reasoning as to why they reversed the death penalty. And both men were reconvicted again, and both were once again sentenced to death, plus life sentences for the rape and kidnapping charges. On February 26, 2014, Michael Taylor, then aged 47, was executed, and he was executed by lethal injection. On September 1st, 2015, at the age of 50, Roderick Nunley was also executed by lethal injection. They kidnapped, raped, tortured, and murdered a 15-year-old child because she was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. These are situations, I've kind of said this sort of thing before on other stories I've told. When you really process this and you think about, like, my God, if she had left her front door, if she had left her house 30 seconds later, a minute later, the two men on their own trajectory, on their own path, would have passed by that bus stop and she wouldn't have been there. I mean, if you really kind of look at it, and this is the case so many times where it's literally the definition of wrong place, wrong time. It's a matter of seconds, if not, minutes, but they didn't know her. She didn't know them. She was just waiting for her bus, which was literally just a minute or two behind, and it's just so tragic that she was just there minding her own business, excited to get the school day started, thinking, it's going to be another normal day in her life. And then within minutes, this horrific thing occurs to her. And she goes through just this awful ordeal, which then leads to her death. Ann Harrison was a very bright young girl, but she would have had a great future. She didn't get to go to her high school prom. She didn't get to graduate high school. She didn't get to grow up. She was only just beginning her life. And unfortunately, her life just so happened to cross paths with the lives of two monsters at the worst possible time. And they took Ann Harrison away from her family, her friends, her classmates, and the world, because you'll never know what she could have done with her life, what she would have done with her life, the success she would have had, the future she would have had, all snuffed out by two evil pieces of shit. But at least in the end, Ann Harrison got the justice she very rightfully deserved. But that is it for this case, True Crime, a Rooney Dooney Dingleberry Dongs. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, please subscribe if you are new to my channel. Hello, my name is Mike. I tell true crime stories here on YouTube. Been doing it for a few years now. Obviously I was over on TikTok. I got a couple million followers over there. But TikTok, as of me filming this, is still active, but it's on the verge of being banned. So I'm filming this before the 19th. It depends on when you see this. TikTok may still be around or not, but if it is, the links to my TikTok are in the link tree below. I tell short form true crime stories over there, but in the description below. But this will be my primary place for posting content should TikTok go away. I will be here pretty much exclusively. So please subscribe, give this video a like, share the video if you want to, hit the bell so you're notified whenever I post a video, which you're going to do a few times a week. I'm going to be posting long form videos and also short form, like 3 minutes or under videos as well. Also in the link tree in the description of this video below, you'll find my case list. The cases I have on my list is like 6,700-ish names long right now. If you scroll through it, it's alphabetical, and you don't see a name on there that you want me to cover, just send me a quick email. My email is listed below in the description, and just send me the name of the case, where it happened, when it happened. I'll add it to my list. I choose the cases I cover each time at random, so I cannot promise you when I'll cover that case, but I will get to it eventually. But that is it for this case, True Crime Roonies. So until the next case, ta-ta for now.